Hello everyone, my name is Abdullah Sajad and welcome back to my tutorial series on STYLY and PlayMaker. Okay, so previously what we created was this controller which had this setup state, and what it did was it created a cube model and deleted the previous controller model for the handheld virtual reality controller. So what we are going to do today is actually create a trigger mechanism and create projectiles from this cube. So to do that, first of all, we need a spawn point, and for that we're just going to create a sphere and make it a child of the controller new model which we created in our previous tutorial. So all we need to do now is simply turn its trigger off, its mesh renderer off, as we really don't want it to be visible. So now what we want to do is just apply it here, which will uh, change the settings and save them in the prefab as well. So now let's create a projectile. So let's create an empty object and call it projectile, and let's add a sphere. Okay, so where is this? Okay, so you can see the sphere is really big, so let's just tone it down. um, let's move it. Oh. Okay, so we've shortened it, or what we could do is simply press 1 1 1, and instead of rescaling the sphere, let's just rescale this. Or and we have the ball. So let's simply create a prefab, and we are done with all of the setup. Now we have to create this projectile when we press the trigger button. So for that we need to create two more states, and in this state we are going to wait for someone to press the trigger. So we're waiting for trigger, and in this state we want to create projectile. So how do we get here? So in order to do that, we will add a transition, an event if you may, to this state. So we want to say that once this state, all the actions in this state are finished, we want to move on to this state, and in here we want to create two events: global trigger press down R and global trigger press up R. Make sure the spellings are exactly like these, or else it won't work. As I previously told you, PlayMaker is actually going to be retrieving all of these um, objects and events from the SteamVR plugin, which is already integrated with STYLY on the other end. So once we have these two transitions, let's add them. So for waiting for trigger, we want to wait until we press the trigger down. So let's add this, and then we don't want to create another object until we have let go of the trigger, so when the trigger is up. So now let's just connect these two. Okay, so we want to create an object when we are when we've pressed the trigger. So we want to know where we want to create the trigger. We want to create the object. So what we did here was in controller model, we added a sphere. So let's just call it the spawn point. This is the point where our projectile will spawn at. And let's just add this here. Okay, so it's already there. We are just going to create another action called get child, and this wasn't previously there. And okay, let's just do it again. We are going to get child, and whose child do we want to get? The controller new model, and we've already stored it in okay controller object. No, let's just make sure what the name over here is. Controller new model. Okay, so controller new model, and we want to save this as a new variable called spawn point. Okay, so let's create the object. Create object. So what's the object we were trying to create? The projectile. Here it is. So it further asks for the position and rotation of the object. What we want to do is get the rotation of the spawn point and the position, or we can simply add in the game object which we just created, spawn point object spawn point, right? Let's just confirm it, spawn point, yes, spawn point, and then we want its rotation. Get rotation. Okay, so since we need the rotation before the create object action, we are simply going to move it up, or we can move this down. Okay, so whose rotation do we want to get? Specify the object, and it's the spawn point. We can get that as an Euler new object, spawn point rotation, create variable. Okay, so we have the rotation, and we have spawn point rotation, spawn point rotation. So which one is it? Spawn point rotation. I'm sorry for the variables, I've already gone through this phase, so they're just already here. Make sure whatever variable you create here is the spellings are correct over here. Okay, so now that we have created the object, we want to give it momentum, force. So in order to do that, we want to do it basically when it's created. We can either do that over here, or we can simply, which is an even easier way, create an FSM over here. Let's call it setup again, and let's add an action of add force. Okay, so it says that the object, the throwable object, needs a rigid body, so simply add a rigid body here and make sure to check use gravity. Okay, so let's, okay, so another thing, always apply. So okay, so we added, we want to as you can see, the error is gone, and we want to use this game object, so we're going to let it be as the use owner option. And basically we also want to change the space. We want to add the force in the axis of its self, and the force we're going to be adding is in the Z direction. You could create a variable before, this action or simply add in a constant. We're going to add, let's say, 2000. Okay, so we're creating the object, and then once the object is created, we are giving it force. So till now everything has been done, and now we're going to take a live demo, but before that we need to re-upload it. And here's another helpful tip: always change the name so you know the name of the object which you are going to be uploading. um, let's just upload. So I'm just going to cut through all of the rest of the recording and take you directly to the demo. So let's test it out if the controller works with the projectiles. So here is the cube, and since we created the spawn point just above the cube, it should look something like this when we press the trigger. Whoa. So as you can see, it's perfectly fine. So since we have learned the basics of how we can access and do stuff with the controller, in our next tutorial we will be attempting to do something even better. So see you next time. Bye bye.